Can I Not Marry audio web novel chapter 34, fracture resulting in plaster in regards to a beginner wearing high heels, spraining your ankle always inevitable. Du Lacey had the honor to experience this. Confronting such a predictable thing, Lian Jun very helplessly sighed and said, "Come on, I'll piggyback you." Du Lacey winced in pain. She opened her eyes to Lian Jun's broad back waiting for her, yet she didn't dare rush on. "What?" Lian Jun asked. Du Lacey felt embarrassed. "Terribly sorry to bother you." Lian Jun raised his eyebrows. "What? Should I carry you instead? You piggyback me instead." She originally thought piggyback less prone for adultery to occur. How wrong she was. The president even took the opportunity to touch her ass. Du Lacey blushed. You, lower your hand a bit. No, over there a little bit. Ah, I'm going to fall. Finally, Lian Jun was angered. Have you finished? With this loud roar, Du Lacey was frightened speechless, using her two injustice eyes to staring at the president while saying, "Woo, I'm disabled and you don't even know how to be a little more gentle." Lian Jun was completely speechless. "Come down, Lao Fang will arrive soon." He put her down. Du Lacey hummed a reply and got off from the president's back. Once her feet touched the ground it caused her to cry out in pain. Hearing this sound diminished all of Lian Jun's anger. He hurriedly helped her and faintly expressed heartache. "You sit for a while and take off your heels," he said as he helped her sit on the ground, while stretching out his hand to take off her shoes. This sudden movement stunned Du Lacey. She absent-mindedly stared at the ground, watching the president with great care took off the high heels off her feet and stared at her swollen ankle as he furrowed his brows. His creased brows pulled Du Lacey from her daze. Her face suddenly flushed. Her hoof was unexpectedly in the president's hands, which was like inlaid in a platinum ring on the pebble. It made her wonder how is her tiny pebble feet worthy of this love. Du Lacey quickly retracted her hoof, however her ankle was caught. "Don't move." Lian Jun unhappily gave her a look and then checked her injuries. Since the president had said this, Du Lacey gave up the idea to retract her hoofs. She blankly stared at her feet within Lian Jun's hands. Her red toe slightly trembled, revealing the owner of those feet to feel constrained and uneasy. Her feet were squeezed into the heels for one night. Red blisters have started to form on her tiny toes. Surely will be smelly. So shameful. Just the thought of this made Du Lacey's hot temperature spread from her toes to the top of her head. Her entire body was engulfed with heat. Suddenly, Lian Jun raised his head, expressing his discontent. "In the future, you are not allowed to wear high-heeled shoes." At this time, Du Lacey's brain was in a malfunction state. She only hummed a reply. Seeing her expression as if her spirit have left her body, Lian Jun felt quite helpless. This girl lacked reinforcement regardless of the situation. She actually sprained her ankle. He also questioned how she actually survived the last 20 years of her life. Although his heart thought this, but he still couldn't bear the sight of it, so he took off his sweater and used it cover her legs. "Also in the future I don't wear such short skirts anymore." Du Lacey, a sound. She suddenly felt something wasn't quite right. Her skirt was already knee length. How is it short? That Huo Yuji didn't even wear a bra under her halter top. She gently mumbled, "My skirt is obviously the longest among everyone." Seizing the opportunity, Lian Jun also added, "You also have the shortest legs among everyone." Quote. Du Lacey's mouth twitched. "What? I am wrong." At that moment, she suddenly understood being together with the president besides one needs to have strong ankles, one must also have a sturdy heart, otherwise you might just vomit blood from anger. T suffering the president's attacks. Although Du Lacey was angry, however she had forgotten about the pain in her foot. Not long after Lao Fang's car came. Lian Jun carried her into the car and ordered Lao Fang, "Go to the closest hospital." At this time, Du Lacey already felt her ankle wasn't as painful anymore. No need to go through so much trouble. It's just a strain, resting a few days should. She hadn't finished speaking when Lian Jun interrupted her. "How do you know if it's only a simple sprain? What if it's a fracture?" Du Lacey's pouted her lips. It's not that serious, right? In fact, it was just that serious. When the orthopedic specialists pointing to the fracture on her X-ray film, he clearly stated, "It's a fracture, which means you'll need a plaster cast." That moment Du Lacey was completely embarrassed. "In fact, I only just gently twisted it a little. Tiny bit." She tried to advise the old doctor to skip the plaster step, desperately gestured with her pinky finger. So the old doctor also used his pinky finger gesture. "You just suffer a small fracture, it's so small. Doctor, I'm not joking with you are." Du Lacey pulled a long face. Don't make me put on a plaster cast, it's so much trouble. I still have to go to work. Do you know, missing one day of work, how less wages I will make? I'm also not joking with you. The old doctor said seriously, don't you know when suffering from a fracture, if you don't have plenty of rest, there's a big chance you'll be limp. But Du Lacey still wanted to struggle, however the president on the side gave his orders, put on a plaster cast. So, Du Lacey, who left the house with a pair of high-heeled shoes, returned home with a plaster cast shoe. Such circumstances were beyond tragic. However, even more tragic circumstances were yet to come. Because of her plaster cast, Du Lacey immediately upgraded and became a disabled person. She even needed Auntie Wu to help her with showering. If that wasn't enough, the most depressing thing was the president also unexpectedly using the excuse of not feeling assured. In the evening he simply to drag her into his room to sleep. Du Lacey didn't know why, but she suddenly felt an indescribable feeling. After the isolation incident, this is the first time they have been in the same room. Du Lacey was exceptionally anxious. After the president left her alone in the room, she decided to pretend sleep before the president got out of the shower. Laying her head on the pillow, the sounds of water rushing in the bathroom stopped. The lights brightly lit the room. A moment later, Du Lacey obviously felt the side of the bed slightly sunken. Then the light turned off. Her heart couldn't help but to speed up a few notches. Her breathing also cramped up. The room was quietly. She heard movements from the side. The president didn't seem like he wanted to do anything and peacefully fell asleep, while breathing soundly. Du Lacey was relieved. She was thankful she's currently disabled, so the president shouldn't laid his hands on her. With such a thought, her heart eased and moved her nervous and stiff body. However, at that moment, an arm embraced her waist, then with a bit of strength, her entire body was dragged into a warm chest. Don't pretend to sleep. A low and slightly teasing voice sounded in her ears, releasing his breath in her ear, causing it to itch. With a simple touch, her entire body froze as if it's been electrocuted. The voice at the side of her ears rise and fall. Suddenly a wet and soft feeling from her earlobe quickly spread to her central nervous system. He was licking her. Being embraced within his arms, her whole body was burning up. Don't. Before she could finish what she was saying, a large palm has probed into her pajamas, touching her most sensitive place. Du Lacey let out a sound and felt a series of soft kisses from her neck. His burning hands triggered her desires. Her eyes and mental ability started to blur. The surging river within her heart started to overflow. However, at that breaching moment her mind suddenly became clear. Stop. Stop. What? Lian Jun reluctantly stopped. Using a displeasure tone he asked, your relatives still haven't left? No. Du Lacey felt embarrassed. My feet. I will be gentle. After he said this he started to kiss her again. No. Du Lacey pushed him away. What? He said, obviously already impatient. Du Lacey pitiful said, the doctor said, if I'm not careful then I'll become limp. When did the doctor say this sentence? Just to be safe then, sorry. Nonsense. He wanted to dive in for another kiss. Don't. What? Limp. 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 She whispered. Quote ellipsis quote. Her muttering became rueful as she asked, you want to bully a disabled person? Quote ellipsis quote. After a moment of silence, he gave a low hum and finally let her go, then quietly turned over to sleep.